All right, folks, it's Alex vlogging here on a kind of a rather wintry. I think it's definitely turned winter, isn't it? It's autumnal. I'm here with the famous or infamous Jon Matrix, and I think this is going to be quite an interesting podcast. We're going to cover a variety of topics. The topics that we're going to cover, I should just sort of give you a bit of a heads up. The big one actually is going to be meditation, because there's been a little bit of a discussion on the Hook Point forum. I'll come around to an intro with Jon in just a sec about how to get out of your head, how to be better on the street, and should you kind of dip your toe into alternative waters, the personal development, the self-development, meditation, all that sort of good stuff. And Jon, of course, runs a business called Male Mastery, so he comes at the wonderful world of daytime approach, I guess, dating from the perspective, from a kind of more holistic perspective, whereas there are plenty of other PUAs out there who are coming at from a more sort of, narrow perspective, let's call it. So I shall, without further ado, I shall just ask the magical Mr. Matrix to give us a little intro, and just if you could in your intro, you could perhaps touch a little bit on the diet issue that we've just been talking about.
Okay. All right. Hey guys. I'm sure most of you probably know who I am from my history with the old daygame.com days and what have you. So for those of you that don't, my name's Jon Matrix. I've been in this industry since 2010, I think it was 2010, 2011. Teaching men how to meet and attract women during the daytime, as we call it, day game. I like to think that, as Alex says, I come at it from a slightly different angle. I don't, I've been with my girlfriend for 5 years now, so I'm not a player. I only teach, and I like to teach men how to come from a position of strength and to get what they want in life, but not to cover up insecurities, past traumas, through chasing women for sex, which I'm sure a lot of guys do.
Yeah, well, you've very nicely sort of not quite set up the second part of the podcast, because we're going to do a meditation, but then I want to come on to the issue of the wider issue of relationship and pickup, because a lot of the guys that are listening to this, half will be wanting to just get their end away as often as and as with as many hot girls as they possibly can. But there's a bunch, probably the rump actually, I would say, who are listening, guys who kind of see it as a stepping stone to relationship, all right? And that's a really interesting, that'll be the second part of the podcast. I should just say that I first, because I should just sell them Mr. Matrix a little, because why should you be listening to him? But I first met Jon on a boot camp I did 3 years ago now, actually. Yeah, it was January 2014. Andy Yosh was still around, daygame.com was flourishing. Tom and you were the coaches. It was a great blend, because I had Tom on the Saturday pushing me into set, and then I had more like the wise old owl approach. Not that you're that old, but on the Sunday where you didn't push me in, it was like you mate, you've learnt the basics on the Saturday. Now you have got to take the initiative. When you take the initiative, then I give you feedback, and we walk round, me and another dude, Westfield Shopping Centre, because it's raining, and Shepherd's Bush, like kind of gunslingers, the three of us, approaching. And I just had I have fabulous memories of that boot camp, and I also met for the first time Andy Yosh last week in Prague.
Right.
Yeah, and I sat him down. We had a couple of drinks, and I said, "Who was the best day game coach you ever had?" And he said it was Jon Matrix. Wow. So I thought that was that was quite a good. What's the word for it?
Not
recommendation, testimony. I think we'll go with that.
Yeah.
And I felt that in a way, all of you know that I know Tom Terrero very well, but Tom is quite, he is the solo player, the lone wolf, and I've always felt that you guys are a good yin and yang combo. But one of the problems is, and we'll now come on to the topic, is this holistic approach being taken the wrong way by guys, all right? the natural game, the being myself, the self-development crowd, okay? And the guys will laugh when they hear me, but I had a bit of a go on the forum just recently when a guy posted a very, we'll kick off the topic of meditation with this quote, a very interesting thread on the forum. He said, I want to get people's tips on how to get out of their heads. Lately, I'm so incredibly in my head, it affects all I do. And that kicked off a bunch of comments about try meditation, read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And I was like, I couldn't help myself. I jumped in. I said, no. You don't want to be starting reading The Power of Now. You'll disappear into your head forever and never come out again. And then guy said, oh, Alex, it sounds like Tom Torero giving advice on the forum. Because, of course, he used to moderate the old DGBCA. So that's the sort of the topic, John.
Yeah.
What's your take?
Okay. Well, firstly, shall I just quickly talk about the diet? Because I didn't mention it. I can just briefly say it. So I've just to something we were talking about before we started the podcast. Alex was telling me how young I look. And we were trying to figure out what it was. I've recently started doing something called the keto diet or the ketogenic diet, which is where you stop eating sugar and carbohydrates and you essentially eat a much higher fat diet, and your body goes into a state called ketosis, where it's turning fat either from your diet or from your body into ketones, which are a form of alcohol, and your body runs on those alcohol instead of running on sugar. And apart from being able to lose weight really quickly, I feel incredible, like mental clarity, no more sugar crashes. And for me personally, it's just worked wonders. So I won't spend ages talking about it. But if any of you guys want to, interested in changing your diet, want to lose weight, trying to do something new, just look up the ketogenic diet.
Yeah, I think that was something. Obviously, I'm interested in. I like a lot of guys. In their 40s or 50s or even their 30s, you get a bit flabby, and there's so many different kind of weight gurus out there and options that you kind of get confused with it all. So it's quite interesting to hear about this diet. I mean, John definitely is, health Nazi when it comes down to it, and proper committed. What's that thing you've got on your app?
It's called MyFitnessPal. So it's a way to track your food, your calories, and for keto it's important because there is a restriction on carbohydrates. So when you're on keto, you have to restrict your carbohydrates pretty heavily. Otherwise, you won't be in ketosis. Your body will still be running on sugar. So when you use this application, you can track how many grams of carbohydrates you're eating to keep it within the range, so that your body will go into ketosis.
Yeah. So I think. Well, I'll do a little summary at the end, so people know where to contact you if they're interested in getting further details. But I think it is very relevant because, from your company is called Male Mastery, and you like to take the holistic approach, and it's not just in. We will get onto meditation in a minute. It's not just the health and fitness. It's also, I think it's the financial side can be critical. And we were just talking a little earlier about a guy called Ian, whom I feel has got himself sort of sorted financially, and is able to enjoy the Tim Ferriss globe trotting. Yeah, and he's got the success on the dating front.
Now, shall I talk a little bit about meditation?
Yeah, let's get.
Okay, so funny enough, I recently did something called Vipassana. Don't know if that's something you've heard of, Vipassana?
No, that's completely new to me.
Okay, so Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It was the most brutal thing I've ever done. It was so unbelievably challenging. So it's 10 days, no phone, no computer, no books, nothing. Residential, so you're there, meditating most of the day, and you can't talk to other people either. So you're even trying not to make eye contact with people because it's all about going inside, and it was just so amazing, but so unbelievably challenging. Like the hardest thing I've ever done, because when you take away all of your stimulation, so you've got no phone, no books, no computer, nothing to look at, you can't talk to people. When you do that, what happens is stuff that you've been pushing down, feelings, emotions that have been suppressed start to come up. So on day 4, I think it was, I started having a lot of emotional turmoil inside me. It started coming up. I don't know what it was about. I didn't have any memory attached to it, but I started feeling awful, like really, really awful. Grief, sadness, really unpleasant. It came up, was there for a few hours, and then it passed. And what that is it's repressed emotions that have been pushed down. And because we live in this world where we're constantly stimulated all the time, just you don't realise how stimulated you are, it pushes it down. And so a lot of that, I had a lot of releases, like emotional releases like that. And then also when you take away all the stimulation, reality starts to jump out at you. It's like literally, I felt like I'd taken a substance. Just walking around the grounds was like I was tripping, because reality starts to shine, becomes more radiant, because you're not desensitized with all the computer screens and what have you. And yeah.
So that, I mean, I guess that sounds a little bit like kind of a reset. I mean, I know from experience day gaming, and I've been quite committed and regular with it, that you do get, for example, at times you can get very jaded. If you don't have buddies to talk to about it, you can get kind of like, I don't know what it is. The rejection over and over and over and over and over again is it's a kind of, you need to be superhuman almost to get through that. And I guess something does build up. But just to keep it real in relation to what we do, have you, can you say more about its impact on guys' performance on the street?
Yeah. So aside from the Vipassana was just something I thought I'd mention because it's something I've done, but I've been meditating before Vipassana anyway. I'd say Vipassana is something that it's an experience that I think everybody would benefit from. It's fucking hard, like it really is brutal. It was harder than I thought. But in terms of just meditation as a way to calm the mind, because a lot of guys have a problem with internal monologue, the chatter, the voice telling you this stuff. What meditation does is it slows it down. It slows it down. It loses its power, and especially if you're not as experienced doing day game, that voice is going to be your worst enemy, because it's going to talk you down. It's going to tell you not to do it. It's going to tell you you're no good. It's going to tell you she's too busy. She's too hot for you. I'll do the next one. All this stuff, all this crap, that voice. And what meditation does, it's a way to disassociate from that voice, and also to quieten that voice.
But it's not something you actually do in the street per se, is it? So how does it, you do it twice? I mean, I've meditated, as you know, been meditating for many years now. My background was in the school of meditation. My father was into meditation. But I mean, I meditate twice a day, most days, usually about 30 minutes, as near as dawn and dusk as possible. But you know what? I've been meditating for 25 years. It didn't help me with girls. I mean, do you know what I mean? So maybe it made my... certainly it helps. It's a bit like what you were saying with the... would you mind just saying that word again?
What, Vipassana?
Yeah, Vipassana, which seems to me like very much a detox of the mind rather than perhaps as well as the body.
Yeah. It was literally like mental purging. I've done a lot of ayahuasca, the psychedelic thing,
yeah.
And the Vipassana was very similar to ayahuasca in terms of the emotional and mental purging. Like you go a bit crazy.
We've had a slight technical hitch. My date turned up like half an hour early, so she's actually sitting over there in the other end of the bar, and I had to break off from the podcast in order to just say hello and just tell her I was in the middle of a meeting. What is quite interesting about this, just to completely digress at the moment, is that you think, oh no, it's a bit like what you were saying earlier about being yourself. So once you do enough of this stuff, you start to just be yourself and be natural. And it's like you start to think, oh, I shouldn't have a meeting before a date. I shouldn't do a podcast. But you know what? I mean, perhaps this is exactly the best thing that can happen, because it makes me look like a guy who's got a life, who's meeting with another dude in a bar.
And she hasn't come first. Your life, your purpose has come before her, which is the way it should be.
Yeah, that's another...
You didn't drop everything as, and I've got to go on, and it's like, no, I'm busy now, but in 15 minutes or half an hour, I'll be over.
Yeah, which is exactly what I kind of had to say. It's almost like if you get your life, enough happening in your life, and you get out and do enough of this stuff, it starts to take care of itself. I think this is just to come back onto the issue and wrap up the issue of meditation, which is where we left it. I think this dovetails with the issue of why meditate. It's not necessarily you're going to meditate on the tube in the way to a day game session or read The Power of Now on the tube and your mind's going to be still and you're going to better jump into action on the street. It's actually a lifetime decision to lead this kind of life. And meditation, it takes 2.5 hours out of your day. Do you know what I mean? So you've then got to start to create more life, get up earlier, so on and so forth. And I think just on that point, I mean, would you agree, John, that it's easy for meditation and mindfulness type personal development stuff to become a weasel and a distraction? There's a fine line, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, it's like anything; it can become an excuse. But ultimately, there's no anybody that says to me, "Our meditation it's a load of rubbish." Because I used to be one of those people. I did it. I tried it once or twice. Couldn't get into it. What is this? Wasting my time, right? Now I'm in the other camp. I'm in the camp telling people you don't understand what it really is until you stick it out for long enough and it changes your life. Then you understand what meditation actually does. Because it's. I think there's a very good quote by and this is getting a bit spiritual. There's a guy called Rupert Spira who I really like. He's a bit like Eckhart Tolle, like non-duality, the truth, spiritual truth, and all that. And he said that we feel like what we are is an ego or a separate self, and meditation is something that we do. When actually, in reality, it's the other way around. What we are is meditation, and the separate self, the ego, is something that we do. So your meditation is your natural state, and being a person, being somebody, being a human being is something you do. We get it backwards.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what we were just talking about a little earlier before we had a technical glitch, was that it's a similar analogy or metaphor can apply to the day game rite of passage. And if we come on to the issue now of relationship and why we do day game, the difference between guys who do it to get laid and perhaps the guys who do it for a relationship, is that it is this is my philosophy of day game, could be night game, women and dating, whatever, is that it's a thorn to remove a thorn, or it's scaffolding if you like. So therefore, if you've got a thorn in your skin, you use a thorn to remove the thorn, but then you throw both thorns away. So a bit like you're saying with meditation, it's being good with women, being a man, is your birthright. It's just you've forgotten it, and you've got to, the craziness of the universe is such, go through these.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And another way that I've recently come to realise this is that going through hardships, trauma, childhood traumas, all these things, it makes up the tapestry of who you are, and it's supposed to be that way. When you come through these hardships, you appreciate life more. You appreciate, if you've always struggled with women, and then in your 30s or 40s or 50s you start sorting it out, there is an appreciation for it, and yeah, it's the journey of your life. It all had to be that way. It couldn't have been any other way. So I think that like you said, every man, it's his birthright to date a lot of women, but find himself, find his masculinity, find his balls, for want of a better word, and go through a rite of passage. And in this day and age, for a lot of guys, it doesn't happen because we have abusive fathers, overbearing mothers, and we have a whole generation of men who are basically approval-seeking pussies who can't stand up for themselves. And I was one of them. And it's not their fault. It's the way that they were conditioned by their parents. And again, it wasn't their parents' fault either. It's just you know what I mean? It's your parents do the best they can with with the tools they had, and some of the stuff they did wasn't good for you. But there's a whole generation of men that have that problem. I mean, I've taught a lot of them, so I know.
Well, that's the question that arises from that is: do all guys need to go on this rite of passage, or else they're going to be needy wusses for the rest of their lives?
I personally think yes. I think rite of passage for men. Like if you look at indigenous tribes, all the men will go through a rite of passage, not just sexually, but in terms of hunting, in terms of going out into the wilderness on their own, surviving. You know, male rites of passage are a timeless thing, phenomenon that's happened for centuries. We've just lost touch with it in the Western world. We've lost touch with our masculinity. We've lost touch with our connection to the earth, and with who we truly are. And we've become soft, for want of a better word.
So this, I mean, to bring it back to the male mastery issue, is that this is something that every guy needs to go through. Can you paint a picture? And feel free to use examples of what male mastery in this area of your life would look like. You know.
Okay. I can. So for me, what happens with guys that get into this day game and pick up is they go into it because they want to get laid. Almost immediately they realise it's not about women, it's all about me. It's all about me improving myself. And they go on this journey, and then what happens is they reach a point and they get wrapped up in women, and they think they've arrived, and they forget that it was all about them, and it becomes all about women again. So they get their skills up, a very superficial kind of thing. Maybe the inner game isn't quite there, but they've got the chat, they know the lines, they do the routines, they're getting laid. And they get wrapped up in the women, and they forget that it was all about them, when actually there's more work to be done. And that's moving into next level stuff. Yeah.
So in other words, because I was going to ask what does the finishing line look like in terms of a guy's day game journey, a dating, seduction, whatever it is, rite of passage. And you're suggesting, if I understand you, that actually perhaps guys get stuck or go down. Have you been down the rabbit hole?
I wasn't there for that long, but I'm not going to mention any names. But I know there's plenty of guys that are some of them older than me that are stuck chasing women, and it becomes an empty, loveless existence. Ultimately, everybody's free to do what they want. I'm not, I'm not saying. I'm just talking. This is my opinion. Is that there is, when you say the finish line. So a lot of guys will get to a point where they're getting laid a lot, and then they say, okay, I've arrived. But that for me, that's like you just got to the starting line. There's next level stuff to get into when you start to get into what life's really all about, as in what you really are, truly understanding what you are. And then there's things like tantric sex, spirituality, and these things I think are, especially something like tantra. If you're it's hard to do it with new women all the time. That makes sense. You want to be forming relationships. I'm not saying you need to be monogamous, but you want to be forming relationships with women that are like-minded, and moving beyond just chasing a girl, getting laid, moving on to the next one is in moving into like having real sex.
Does that mean that in terms of the day getting male mastery in the finishing line, you're looking at perhaps a guy who has a number of women in his life whom he's got many relationships with, and he's gone through the stage of regular sex with different girls, and he's now got. Is that a phase? Did you go through a phase like that down the rabbit hole?
Yeah, I did. I was at a phase where I was dating multiple women, but like I said, everybody's different. But for me, and also
sleeping with them as well.
Yeah, of course, obviously. Yeah. As in having multiple women that I'm not having an exclusive girlfriend, day gaming all the time, to the point where it's an addiction, and sleeping with lots of women. But it has a shelf life. It's great fun. I'm not knocking it. Every man should do it. Like absolutely do it. But I do feel like it has a shelf life, and for a lot of guys, what it becomes love avoidance, sex addiction, which if you've ever had therapy, you'll know what I'm talking about. It becomes where there should be love in your life, you're replacing it with sex.
It also becomes quite a competitive pursuit as well, particularly if you were on a forum. I mean, do you think forums are a good idea? I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think I really dislike the whole industry, the pickup industry, the way that, like you said, that men. It's like it becomes this alpha male thing of I'm an alpha, you're a beta, and I'm an alpha, you're a beta. this is the alpha thing to do. I fuck women. I'm masculine. You know, all that. And for me, that's a lot of that bravado is covering up insecurities. Like real men, real solid men who have mastered themselves don't need to do that, in my opinion.
Well, I think that part of that's all fair and right, and I know that you, John, knowing you personally, you've been through this rite of passage, okay? My worry is, and I think this is a big caveat, is that a lot of guys who will be listening to this haven't really, put their shoulder to the wheel, if you like, haven't really committed, haven't really been through that rite of passage, and are getting diverted by the shininess of personal development, reading books about meditation and kind of flirting with meditation and mindfulness.
Now I understand what you mean when you said it was a cop-out. It's another way to not approach. It's like, I'll just stay at home and read the meditation books instead of going out. And you're right. You've got to go out there and you've got to do it. But do the meditation as well. Do the self-development alongside the day game and treat the day game as a piece of self-development. But using it as a cop-out, as a way not to go out and approach, yes, I get what you mean now.
Because our mind is a pretty clever little thing. Our ego tricks us, doesn't it? And thinking we're actually doing something when we're not doing it. I think this is perhaps what you're saying is more relevant for an intermediate guy, for want of a better word. A guy when he's starting out should really gun it, shouldn't he?
Yeah.
But one of my questions that I've got here is, do you think a proper immersion is important in women in dating, or do you think you don't need to spend 6 months of your life going crazy and taking time off your work and things like that? What's your view on that?
I think it's not a necessity, but it definitely helps. I've done it. All the guys I know that have got really good at day game quickly, they all did it. It was 6 months to a year of just going nuts. And I think that's all right, but as long as it doesn't become an addiction that you carry on doing, and you're sort of like 10 years down the line, you're still doing day game with the intensity that you did it in those first 6 months. I think that's unhealthy. And it's like I said earlier, it all depends where it's coming from. If it's coming from a place of strength, where you love women, you love life, and you don't want to be monogamous, and you want to have lots of relationships with women, and you're totally solid in where you are in your life, more power to you, great. But if it's covering up weakness, and that you're getting your I can't think of the word. It becomes a validation, ego boost, because you feel one down in your life. Getting with women is a one up, and it's this cycle of one down, one up, one down, one up. That's the same as someone using cocaine. It's just a way of coping with internal trauma. So it really depends where it comes from. But I know a lot of guys who have this issue, traumatized for whatever reason in the past. Sex and chasing women will become their drug of choice.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's really helpful. We'll just conclude with the final thing, which is one of my favourite bête noirs. The rump of guys who are listening to this will be looking in the long term for a relationship. There aren't that many sole players, and I think you're right that there are individuals who are the Casanovas of the world, unique guys who probably will do this for life, and they're pioneers in this area, and that's fine because we learn from them, don't we? They stop doing it in pubs. But most guys are probably... Well, would you agree with that, first of all, that most guys are looking for relationship out of this?
I would say, yeah. I'd say the majority of guys that I've taught over the years, most of them just would like... Maybe they want to play the field for a bit, but ultimately they want to have love in their life. They want to meet someone that they love.
Yeah. Okay, so with that caveat then, here's the question. Do you need to have sex with the girl first before the relationship, and the quicker the better?
In my opinion, that's the way it's supposed to be. People meet. There's a sexual attraction. There's a lust between them. They should have sex first and then build a relationship. Doing it backwards doesn't work, because I've actually done it that way. And before day game, I met a girl.
Say more.
Yeah, I met a girl online. Actually, this is back when I first started sorting myself out. And I thought, if I can't chat to a girl on a computer screen, I'll never chat to a girl in real life. So I got on online dating, and I met this girl from Liverpool, and we hit it off like wildfire. We were chatting like 9 hours a day on there for a long time. Got to know each other inside out. Then we finally met, and it ruined it because we knew each other too well before we had sex. It ruined it.
Really?
Yeah.
And you don't... Yeah, fine. So...
I honestly believe the way it should be. I'm not saying you need to meet someone and have sex the first time you meet them, but meeting someone and waiting months before you have sex is, in my opinion, is not the way it's supposed to be.
So in terms of, we've said this is a rite of passage that a man needs to go through. He needs to kiss a lot of fuck a lot of frogs. Your feeling is, and perhaps talk about your own experience, is that you need to treat there's no special frog at the beginning of a relationship that you need to treat differently than any other frog.
No. I think what each man does on a date with a girl is his own business. But I do think that the sexual component of the relationship it needs to start with the sexual component. It does. So I'm not saying you need to have sex with a girl on the first date. If you do, great. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But I think getting to know someone really well over a period of months before you then take the relationship sexual is not the right way to do it. I don't think it's natural that way. I think it's the other way around. It should be people meet. There's an attraction, a lust. They have sex, and then they build a relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't know you thought that. I wasn't sure whether you would have a different perspective on it. But your take on guys who may say, well, my family background, my religious traditions legislate against doing that. What answer do you have for them?
Well, firstly, I would say there's a difference between getting to know someone before you have sex and no sex before marriage. They're two different things. I think no sex before marriage is I think it's wrong, extremely damaging for men and women because it's not natural and it's based on a lie that there is this angry God that's going to smite you if you sin, which is just nonsense.
And that is quite a big statement, Mr. Matrix. That's like a lot of people, and perhaps a bunch of guys listening to this, will come from religious traditions. They'll be Christians or Muslims or whatever it might be, and they'll be like the whole of their life up until this point, until they discovered sketchy stuff.
I've just told them it's all a lie.
You just told them it's all a lie. Is there a way of squaring that circle, I wonder? Have you had students with this predicament? How have you handled it?
Yeah, there was one guy in particular I remember who told me this and said that I taught him at once over a period of time, and then it was a year later I taught him again, and it just came up. He's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian and I'm a devout Christian. I don't believe in sex before marriage, and it blew my head off. And I just thought, what are you doing? You can't do day game and meet women and expect to meet someone who's going to be your life partner, and then you break it to them that there's going to be no sex before marriage. If you meet a woman at your church group, right, or at church, who thinks the same way as you, maybe, but chatting up, women on the street, they're going to want to have sex with. They're going to want to sex before marriage. It's just, it's anyway. But that's everybody, each their own, right? If you really believe it, fair enough. That's your, that's up to you. But it's going to be a problem because a lot of women are not, unless they're of the same understanding. It's never going to work.
Well, I did have a conversation with a buddy whom I winged with a few years ago, and he's now married. He's a Muslim, and but for him, he feels that the rite of passage that he went through helped him to have the right relationship, married relationship now. He didn't have a bunch of sex with her. He didn't meet her on the street. He met her through, his network, his community, his family. But it was quite an interesting conversation, actually. He did say that what he had done for 2 or 3 years, hitting the streets and having a bunch of sex, had influenced who he was now that he was in the relationship.
So was this a guy that was believed in no sex before marriage and then decided to just go out and get laid a lot?
Well, I mean, he was like one of us. He wasn't up his own arse about religion and Islam, but he was was a family man and a Muslim, and absolutely the whole marriage issue was important to him. And I guess I don't know what Islam says about sex before marriage, but they go abroad to have it, don't they? That's the trick. But that's interesting. They kind of know they've got to go through the rite of passage somehow. Right. Somehow they've got to get it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it ends up becoming you're repressing sexuality, It's this whole thing about that religion says that sex is dirty and it's wrong. Like masturbation is wrong, sex is wrong. It's just completely. It's not based on truth. It's based on a lie that there is this God that is separate from you, up in the sky, who has human attributes. And when you do, and sex is dirty, and therefore, if you do it, you're going to get whatever, punished.
Sent
punished.
To hell.
Yeah.
Sent to that place. Right. Well, I think we should probably wrap up. I do.
Something else.
Yeah. No. Good. I'll just quickly check my notes here, make sure I've covered everything off. I guess just a quick kind of general point. For the guy who is going through this rite of passage, how many times a week do you think he should go out and hit the streets?
I get asked this a lot. How many days did you go out? How many approaches did you do? I can't remember. The bottom line is you just need to do it enough that you're getting the volume in, but not so much that it becomes a complete obsession. I mean, I don't know. If you're working, it's hard if you do a 9 to 5 to find the time. I mean, I was playing poker for a living at the time, so I just stopped playing for 6 months, and I was out maybe 4 days a week, 5 days a week. But that's a lot. That is pretty extreme. That's a pretty extreme amount of time to be doing it. So I think I don't know. I can't put a number on it really. But if you just have to. It depends how bad you want it, and you just gotta look at your schedule and find a bit of time. Even if it's just 1 day a week, if you go out for 3 hours 1 day a week, it's enough.
3 hours 1 day a week is enough if you're doing it regularly and routinely.
If that's the only time that you have because you're working 15-hour days or whatever, crazy hours, then that's what you have to do. But if it turns out that actually you could do an hour every evening as well after work, and do that 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon, then do that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've because I am quite busy in setting up a law firm. I've actually given myself this 52 First Dates project to try and get 52 first dates, because I feel that I've learned how to day game, but what I really now need to learn is about the dating process. Converting and taking it to the bedroom.
Yeah. That's something that actually it took me. Yeah, it was about 3 years before I really felt like I'd totally arrived with dates. That day game was great, but I went through a lot of periods of messing up dates. So they're two different things.
Oh yeah, brother, I completely with you on that, because I feel that particularly last year the dates were it's so annoying, because getting blown out on the street, that's one thing, but cocking up on the date, that's really annoying. So just so guys know, my routine is 2 to 3 times, but I will take a break for a couple of weeks, but not 75% of the year it will be 2 to 3 times a week, 1 to 2 hours, 20 to 30 approaches, and I often find it's a tonic away from my job. So at the lunch break, I'll go out in the streets. That's a good busy time. Or in the evenings, rush hour, I'll go out into the streets after work.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it's rush hour, perfect, because you're going to get high volume of women. So it's going to be an hour or half an hour, whatever, well spent. You're not going to be walking. That's another thing. Don't walk around for hours and not doing any approaches. So many guys have done it. I've done it. Go out and do some as quickly as possible. There's nothing worse than walking around for hours and hours and hours, not doing any approaches, and then going home having done none. That's the worst thing you can do.
I think a lot of guys think this is what an immersion is. You take 3 months of your job off and you go and you float around a foreign capital, walking around Saturday and Sunday and making a handful of approaches, and you're doing day game. It's got to be concentrated, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at it as when you reach a point when you are what's the word? You're getting consistent results, then you can afford to be picky. Until that point, just date and approach as many women as possible. I'm not within reason. I'm not saying you need to go crazy, but treat it as like a dojo. This is your dojo. This is your learning process. You need to practice dating, and you can't only date your 10 out of 10s because you'll fuck it up. You need to date women that you're not so bothered about, so you can practice escalation, because it takes balls to escalate. And the hotter they are, the more you're going to want to play it safe. So you need to practice your moves. You need to practice being physical with a woman.
Yeah. So how many dates do you think you had during your 3-year period?
No idea. It's probably not as many as people think. I never did like the 52 first dates. I was always a bit more, especially once I got good, I was a bit more picky. I wasn't as crazy to just get notches on the bedpost. So I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, you have. I think you have a little bit of reputation of going after quality once you sort of bolted down the skills.
Yeah, it never getting like 100 lays in a year or 58, whatever. That never interested me. Just not. That's just ego stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, exactly. That's. Anyway, we should wrap up. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to give?
Well, talking of rites of passage, there is another business venture that I'm just engaged in now. It's something called Kambo. Have we ever told you about this? Kambo?
No.
So it's called Kambo frog medicine, and essentially it's a alternative medicine treatment. I'll show you these little marks on my arm. I'm showing to Alex right now. Essentially, what it sounds absolutely bonkers, right? But what you do is you take an incense stick and you very, very lightly burn the top layer of skin, and then you get a tissue and you rub it off. So now you have the top layer exposed. Then you take the venom from a tree frog from the jungle and you put it on the wound. And what it does is it causes a really deep purge. So it's a really cleansing for the body. You'll vomit. Sometimes you'll shit as well. And it's you do it in a group in a ceremony. And in the indigenous tribes, it's a very masculine thing. It's a rite of passage for men. It's a hunter's medicine. They use Kambo and then they go out hunting the next day because it sharpens your senses, sharpens your reflexes. But the long-term benefit of it is you don't get sick, ever. I've been doing Kambo for nearly probably 6 years now. I literally never, ever get any colds or flu or anything like that.
Well, you definitely should be promoting the whole health side of things, because you do sound a little bit of a fledgling guru in this area.
Absolutely. And another thing, so what Kambo is good for is it's a hunter's medicine. It's good for, they use it before they go hunting, but they also use it for procreation. It allegedly, this is what they say, it makes you more attractive to the opposite sex. So going and doing some Kambo.
Right now we are getting into a crazy Twilight world.
Yeah, absolutely. But doing Kambo to really get in touch with your masculinity, and then going out and doing day game is it's not something I've actually experimented with much. But if you want a rite of passage as a man, really put yourself through it. Come and do Kambo.
Right. So, how do they get in touch with you, John?
You can drop me an email. It's Jon, Jon @male-mastery.com. I tell you what, maybe we have for the Kambo we have a meetup group. We do it through Meetup, so maybe you can post the link at the end with the podcast.
Yeah, sure.
You can also check out Male Mastery if you're interested in getting some personal coaching from me. You can just.
Because you've been coaching this afternoon, haven't you? You're regularly coaching.
Yeah. I literally just came from coaching someone at Oxford Circus to meet Alex here. So you can check out the website. It's www.male-mastery.com. You can check out our YouTube channel. There's lots of free content on there. Any questions, or if you want to do some Skype coaching with me or some coaching in person.
So you do Skype coaching?
I do Skype coaching as well. I also do obviously live in field coaching.
And what are your fees, your charges?
Well, we're actually doing a special.
An hourly rate?
Yeah, we are doing a special at the moment. So we're doing a special. You can do 8 hours for 400 or 16 hours for 640. So it's 50 quid an hour or 40 quid an hour.
Skype coaching or one-to-one coaching?
No, that'll be live one-to-one.
Oh, right.
That's a limit.
Okay.
It's for a limit.
It's very reasonable.
It's really reasonable. So it's for a limited time only. So if anybody that, if you listen to this and you want to come and get some coaching with me, then now's probably a really good time to do it.
Do you guys travel at all? Europe, America, so on and so forth?
We
Because you're a team with Dave Diggler, is that right?
That's right. If there's demand for it, we'll do it. If there's demand for it, we'll do it. But to be honest, at the moment, the way things are with the whole industry and the way things are moving, is that I'm personally more focused on personal development, and especially with Kambo.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you very much, John, for chiming in.
Pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
It's been interesting, isn't it?
If you want to get me back on any time, just ask.
Great. Okay, and I will just finally endorse a book. I brought it along to this podcast. It's called Iron John. It's quite an interesting one. It's based on a grim fairy story about a boy who's forced to leave the king and the queen and go on a crazy mission with a wild man who gets discovered in the forest. And like a lot of what you're saying reminds me of the fact this poor adolescent boy is ripped out of the arms of his family, loving, supportive family, and has to go into the forest. And I think that for me is what a day game has been a real revelation is the fact that it's such an interesting rite of not just interesting, and it's an essential rite of passage for a man. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Cheers, guys. Bye for now.